This is Drew. I'm about to show you how to do a oil change on a 2015 Mazda 6. You're going to want to do an oil change on these vehicles like this probably about twice a year, or depending upon your driving, every 5 to 10,000 miles using modern synthetic oils. But with older, more conventional oil types, it's going to be closer to 3 to 5,000 miles. Also, that depends a little bit on your driving characteristics. If you drive your car a lot very hard, like on the track, or spirited driving on the street, it may make a little bit more sense to change your oil more frequently rather than more infrequently. Obviously, for a oil change, you're going to need some oil. So in this case, we have OW20, which is the type of oil you need for the Mazda 6. And we're using Pennzoil Platinum Pure Plus technology. It's a pretty good oil, and I've used it before in my GTI. Works pretty well. We also have some jack stands for jacking up the car, because you don't want to leave just the floor jack up underneath you. That's going to be unsafe. Also, you're obviously going to need a new oil filter for the car. So in this case, we're using a Wix filter, which is the good brand that you can pick up at your local O'Reilly's or parts store. You're also going to need some sockets for probably a socket wrench, and then you can pick up something like this for 10-20 bucks at your local parts store. Whenever I'm breaking the nut on the oil pan, I'm going to be using my drill, which is just a Bosch 12-volt hand drill. Works pretty well with a 19mm nut on the end. That's what I use for my GTI as far as the nut. I'll swap it out for a different one if I need to for the Mazda 6. And then I also have some rags, towels for cleaning up a little bit at the end. Ideally, you're going to be using something a little bit nicer than this kind of jack that came in the back of my Volkswagen. But I'm using this to show you guys using kind of the most basic tools that you are most likely to have. But of course, a nicer floor jack would be better. And then I have some 5W30 over there. That's what I'm going to be using for my GTI later. But for the Mazda 6, it's not necessary. And those are the parts we're going to need. Now you're going to warm up your engine a little bit to get the oil a little bit more fluid running through the motor, so that it flows out more easily. Also, so that it doesn't gum up it anywhere. But you also don't want it to be very hot, because in that case you might burn yourself when you're changing out the oil. So in this case, I drove the Mazda around a little bit up to the parts store to just pick up some cleaning materials and stuff for what I'm going to be doing later. And that kind of drive was about a 2-mile drive in total, which is enough to warm up the car a little bit, but not make it too hot. The first thing you're going to want to do is jack up your car so that you can get underneath it and drain the oil once it's been jacked. To do that, you're going to take the contact point on your jack and place it up underneath on a jack point, which should be near the frame of the car. You don't want to put it directly on the frame. That could potentially damage the vehicle, but you should be able to use a fairly broad amount of space underneath the car as a jack point. Once you have the jack lined up, you're going to go ahead and start pumping the car up until it gets high enough that you can get underneath and access the underbody of the vehicle. Periodically inspect the way that the car is moving upward to check and see if there's any misalignments that you made. If you have the vehicle high enough, you should be able to place a jack stand up underneath the car. Yeah, just like so. You should be able to slot a jack stand up underneath to help support the car. We're going to do the same thing at all 4 corners. And voila, the engine cover is popped off, which gives me more easy access to the dipstick and to the oil cap, so I can refill the oil more easily with the funnel, and also check the status of the oil, which we can go ahead and do. As we can see here, the oil, I'm really having a hard time getting it to focus, but the oil is very dark, meaning that it was definitely high time for an oil change. We're going to inspect the underbody one more time, give the jacks a little wriggle, check them for safety, because we definitely don't want those things failing while we're underneath the car. All the oil that we're going to be dumping out today is going to go inside this bin here, which is what you're going to want to do. You're not going to want to dump that oil or leave it on the ground or throw it away. It's best to recycle it using a container like this, and you can take it to your local parts store to have it recycled. So that's going to slide up underneath the car. We're going to twist this cap all the way out so the oil can drain properly into it, and set that off to the side. We're going to open up this little kind of a valve here so that as the oil flows into there, this can allow air to come out so you don't get bubbling. So that just... In the maintenance, we took out a couple push pins, which we can see over back that way, and a little bracket piece came off. I'm about to go back underneath, show you guys what else I can see. Alright, so now we have a oil filter, which we'll screw off in a minute. And we also have something I didn't anticipate, the oil pan, which is a T50 it looks like, Torx, which I luckily have. If I didn't have that, we'd be out of luck, unfortunately, because that's a pretty specific tool you need for that, the T25 or T50s, the Torx in general. I apologize for my shaky hand down here. It's extraordinarily difficult to film at the same time as everything else while in this small kind of confined space. I'm sure if I had a lift, it would be a lot easier. These bits typically will connect to the end of a socket wrench. This particular one's a 3/8 head, but to fit that onto my drill, I have one of these guys, which is a little 3/8 adapter for a drill, so you can attach these bits here. See if I can do that with one hand. Yeah. There we are. Once you pop the nut, you should get a pretty consistent flow of oil coming out of the bottom, which you wait for to complete. Meanwhile, you can go ahead and pop the lid off of the oil cap here, which lets air go down the hole and take the oil at the bottom, which is going to help you out. As we can see there. Let me keep doing that. Yeah, lets the oil come out the bottom. It looks right now as if we're getting a slow in the flow. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and start removing the oil filter, which we just twist off in this case, which may need a cloth to help you get a grip. If it's a little bit greasy down there, if your car has a leak, that might be an issue that you experience. And then also, once we get that oil filter taken off, we'll put our new one on and go ahead and start refilling the oil. Alright, while we're waiting on that oil to drain out, we have our fresh oil here, which has a lid that just twists right off, as such. And then you have our fresh clean oil and our new filter. And this new filter we don't want to put on dry. We want to lube it up a little bit with some fresh oil here. Just stick a finger in probably. Just kind of get a line of oil going around just to get it a little bit wet so it doesn't stick and seize up later on. Alright, so I successfully got the old oil filter off. So it is sitting back there. Now that we have the oil filter taken off and the oil is basically completely drained, we're going to let it sit for maybe a second longer. We can go ahead and start putting on the new filter, replacing the nut back inside the oil pan so it'll obviously not drain through, and we can start dumping in the fresh oil. And that will be basically it. Make sure that you inspect everything down here for wear and tear, and ideally use a new nut for your oil pan each time so that the old one doesn't wear out. Yeah, so I went ahead and tightened up the plug with my drill first, just to get it tight, and then torqued it down to, you know, a little bit of torque, but not too much, not using a breaker bar or anything, to go ahead and leave it tight. I did not have a spare plug with me at the moment, otherwise I would have used that. Here's a last little tightening measure. Just going to take our T50 here and make sure it's in the tight setting. And we're going to give it one little tug. Okay, alright, that's nice and tight, so we can go ahead and pull that out and leave the new filter and the new plug and a clean oil pan. Make sure you get it all cleaned up so any future oil leaks will be able to be noticed, and then we can go ahead and start putting in oil at the top. If you do your own oil change on your Mazda 6 or any other vehicle and spill significant amounts of oil, you're going to want to go ahead and take that time to get it cleaned up, because leaving too much oil lying around inside your motor is going to potentially be a fire hazard if that decides to catch. So wipe absolutely as much of it down as you can. Unfortunately, that's what happened here. In your circumstance, hopefully that does not take place. You can easily prevent that by using a funnel, which I have. I just didn't bring with me. I figured I can go ahead and pour it out easily, but the nature of the shape of the canister I was using meant that as soon as it started coming out of the lid, it was really starting to come out, so did spill a little bit of oil there. We have the fresh oil in the oil pan, and I checked the dipstick level. Looks like it looked good. Nice clean oil to a proper level. Went ahead and cleaned off most of the oil out of the places where I had a little bit of a spill. So I'm going to go ahead and set the engine cover back on. Give it some pushes at all four corners. Make sure it's stamped down, so that's back in place. At which point we can go ahead and drop the hood, which will require two hands. So now that the engine thing is down, we can go ahead and drop the hood, and the vehicle has had its oil changed. Now all that's left is to clean up underneath the car and bring the car off of its jack stands. And that is an oil change on a 2015 Mazda 6. Actually, in another video I just did one for my 2011 GTI, but yeah, I did them both in the same day, using of course different oils. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see anything else, any other kind of repair videos or maintenance tips. I'm also going to be doing lots of other stuff too, like bicycling and hiking, other types of venturing stuff, but I'm also going to be doing a lot of car videos like maintenance, repair, that kind of thing. But let me know if you guys would like to see anything specific. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye bye.